Welcome back. Wednesday, February 24th, 2021. Beginning tomorrow commences the annual Conservative Political Action Conference, better known as CPAC. Comes now the media and columns denouncing it as such things as a right-wing gab fest and the like. It will garner especially unique attention as Donald Trump will be speaking at the conference. Under a column today titled, "Trump Can't Redefine Conservatism," in the Arizona Republic this morning, Robert Robb writes, quote, "Conservatism isn't whatever Trump deems to be in his political self-interest at the moment. That fiscal conservatives such as Jeff Flake and John McCain are pariahs in Trump's Republican Party says more about the party and its relationship to true conservatism than about them." Close quote. Frankly, I think McCain and Flake made themselves pariahs, irrespective of Donald Trump. John McCain campaigned for re-election in the Senate in 2016, promising to lead the fight, his words, to end Obamacare. In 2017, quoting NPR, quote, "In a moment of unexpected high drama, Republicans were stymied once again in their effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and they have John McCain to thank for it," close quote. He voted to save Obamacare. Did Donald Trump earlier say unpleasant, even disrespectful things of John McCain? Yes. Is that a reason for John McCain to harm the rest of the country? No. And it was, people forget, John McCain who drew first blood with Donald Trump when Donald Trump announced his candidacy for the presidency in 2015. What John McCain said of Trump's announcement was this, quote, "What he did was he fired up the crazies. We have a very extreme element within our Republican Party. Now he's galvanized them. He's really got them activated," close quote. I suppose we would expect Hillary Clinton to call us deplorables, but when McCain refers to us as the crazies and extremes, it's a little harder to take when he relied on us and Sarah Palin for his own elections. And let us not forget a few years before that, he called Ted Cruz and Rand Paul wacko birds, as he also questioned Ted Cruz's eligibility to run for the presidency. If fiscal responsibility is a chief mark of conservatism per Robert Robb, there is no one more fiscally responsible than Rand Paul, who still does sit in the Senate and who had no problem supporting Donald Trump, and who McCain, Robert Robb's beau ideal, called a wacko bird. As for Jeff Flake, I ran out of words years ago. Some of the words I've said before was, when you have an approval rating of 18% from your constituency, as he did when he decided not to run for re-election, maybe the problem is you and not the 82% of people who think you're doing a bad job. Jeff Flake says he is from the party of Barry Goldwater, and even titled his book, The Conscience of a Conservative. He stole that title, obviously, from Barry Goldwater, and it was weird and also philosophically inapt. You will find nothing Goldwaterian in Jeff Flake's book. You will find distortions of history about Goldwater in it. You will, if you go back a little in history, see actually Barry Goldwater doing things like condemning Fidel Castro, even wanting to send the Marines into Cuba and strengthening our resistance to Castro. But if you go back a little further less in history, you will see Jeff Flake wanting to send dollars to Castro, dollars into Cuba, and weaken our resistance to Castro. If you go back maybe just a little more, you will see the Democrats thinking it a good idea to send dollars to Iran and weakening our sanctions there. If you go back just a little before that, you'll see Jeff Flake opposing that idea in 2015, but then criticizing Trump when he actually did end it. This, you might call, is the placing of personalities over principles, like Jeff Flake is very good at. But then knowing this, spare me the encomiums to Jeff Flake and his doughboy Confederates as standing on anything like principles. That all said, when Robert Robb writes, quote, "Conservatism isn't whatever Trump deems to be in his political self-interest at the moment," close quote, it's hard to criticize because I'm not sure I've ever heard Donald Trump really weigh in on what it means to be a conservative. I think it's more fair to say, and a lot of people miss this, I think, that conservatives gelled and cottoned to Donald Trump because of his platform and slogan to make America great again. Strengthening America is a conservative cause, and maybe the most foundational and important conservative cause of all time, especially now as we are in, as conservatives well know, an existential regime-threatening moment, a Lincolnian house-divided moment. As Tom Klingenstein of the Claremont Institute has put it, we find ourselves in a regime-level contest. A regime-level conflict is a struggle over what a society aims at, what its end is. Differences and ends cannot be negotiated. Antebellum America provides a good example of societies with different ends. The South believed that slavery was a good thing and so wanted to expand it. The North, on the other hand, believed it a bad thing and so wanted to contract it. This is an example of a non-negotiable difference. A nation cannot go in opposite directions at the same time. Multiculturalism, for one example, has its own end, and it is one that cannot exist peacefully with the American way of life any more than the North and South could exist peacefully together. And there's a lot more than multiculturalism at our divide right now. Chinese appeasement and growth is one. Free speech is another. American history itself is yet one of the biggest. Donald Trump took all that on and more, and thus conservatives went for him. Arthur Millick put it all this way: America is currently engaged in a regime-level struggle that will preserve or destroy the purpose that has defined it. On one side stands the American way of life, characterized by Republican self-government and the habits of mind and character necessary to sustain it. On the other side stands identity politics, which demands the perpetual punishment and humiliation of so-called oppressor groups combined with the unquestioned rule of the so-called marginalized. These two regimes are in conflict and cannot coexist either. The regime of identity politics has already conquered nearly all of America's major institutions and dominates the moral high ground. The universities and schools, Fortune 500 companies, much of the media and image-making industries, big tech, and the administrative state are put to use waging war on the American way of life. Many of these institutions attack, ban, and slander everything for which America stands, alleging that the rule of law is racist, the freedom of speech is white supremacist, and that family is misogynist and homophobic, and anything short of open borders, xenophobic. The nation can't survive this trajectory either. If conservatism can't stand against this, it might as well fold up, because America will fold up if conservatism doesn't win. These issues, by the way, were totally alien, always were totally alien to the Jeff Flakes and John McCains. They never spoke of them. They never could and never would speak of them because they couldn't recognize them as the true wholesale threats to America, constitutionalism, and fundamental benchmarks of what this country is about. But thinking about CPAC, conservatism, and the various strands or elements within the conservative movement, with the always constant hobby of those who like to write its obituary every few years when they don't like certain conservative spokesmen or Republicans of the moment, I think it's a good idea to look at a speech at CPAC from some years ago, 1977 to be exact. It went like this. You know as I do that most commentators make a distinction between what they call social conservatism and economic conservatism. The so-called social issues, law, order, abortion, quota systems, they're usually associated with blue-collar, ethnic, and religious groups themselves traditionally associated with the Democratic Party. The economic issues, inflation, deficit spending, big government, are usually associated with Republican Party members and independents who concentrate their attention on economic matters. Now, I am willing to accept this view of two major kinds of conservatism, or better still, two different conservative constituencies. But at the same time, let me say that the old lines that once clearly divided these two kinds of conservatism are disappearing. In fact, the time has come to see if it is possible to present a program of action based on political principle that can attract those interested in the so-called social issues and those also interested in the economic issues. In short, isn't it possible to combine the two major segments of contemporary American conservatism into one viable, effective whole? I believe the answer is yes. When a conservative states that the free market is the best mechanism ever devised by the man-to-man to meet material needs, he's merely stating what a careful examination of the real world has told him is the truth. When a conservative says that totalitarian communism is an absolute enemy of human freedom, he's not theorizing. He's reporting the ugly reality captured so unforgettably in the writings of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, as one example. When a conservative says it's bad for the government to spend more than it takes in, he simply is showing us the same common sense that tells him to come in out of the rain. When a conservative quotes Jefferson, that government that is closest to the people is best, it's because he knows that Jefferson risked his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor to make certain that what he and his fellow patriots learned from experience was not crushed by an ideology of empire. The Republican Party, I envision, will not be and cannot be one limited to the country club, big business image that, for reasons both fair and unfair, it is sometimes burdened with. The new Republican Party I'm speaking about is going to have room for the man and woman in the factories, for the farmer, for the cop on the beat, the millions of Americans who may never have thought of joining our party before, but whose interests coincide with those represented by principled republicanism. If we are to attract more working men and women of this country, we will do so not by simply making room for them, but by making certain they have a say in what goes on in the party. The Democratic Party turned its back on the majority of social conservatives in the 1960s. The new Republican Party must welcome them, seek them out, enlist them, not only as rank-and-file members, but as leaders and as candidates. The time has come for Republicans to say to black voters, for example, look, we offer principles that black Americans can and do support. We believe in jobs, real jobs. We believe in education that is a real education. We believe in treating all Americans as individuals and not as stereotypes or voting blocks. And we believe that the long-range interest of black Americans lies in looking at what each major party has to offer and then deciding on the merits. The Democratic Party takes the black vote for granted. It's time black America and the new Republican Party move toward each other and create a situation in which no black vote will ever be taken for granted. This speaker went on, and I'll cover what he said more in the next several segments. If you didn't know it, the speaker was Ronald Reagan. It could have been Donald Trump. And anyone who wants to tell us that a conservatism of 1964 Goldwaterism and 1980 Reaganism is, in its new clothes but same philosophies, not conservatism, is either unfamiliar with what conservatism is or what it should be. We do not make that mistake here. We simply cannot, not at a time of regime-level struggle. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.